You think you hate it now, but wait till you drive it.
The Kibbe and Friends Show.
What it is, bro?
Featuring Rob Kibbe.
I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
Justin Corn Dog Cornett.
New guy's in the corner puking his guts out.
And show producer Bernie McPartland.
This is the DJ 3000, and it has 3 distinct varieties of inane chatter.
Talking cars.
Do you feel this vehicle is safe for highway travel?
Yes, I do.
Diving deep on the topics that matter most.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this.
And totally redeem yourself.
And the Dukes of Hazzard. Available in iTunes, Stitcher, and whatever else it is you listen on.
Turn up the volume.
The Kibbe and Friends Show.
Kibbe and Friends Show, episode number 136. Available on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, not so often in the YouTubes, and Patreon, and Spotify. Have I plugged Spotify enough? People dig the Spotify. Learning about Spotify. Just Rob here. Okay, and totally it's just me. Bernie's not here. Corn Dog's not here. Saturday morning. This is a bit of a greatest hit show. Repeat, if you will. A Groundhog Day type show, as it were. Because, well, A, it was just Groundhog Day by the time you hear this. Super Bowl Sunday as well. I wonder who won. Hope it was the Chiefs. And B, I'm recording this in advance so I can be gone next week when you're actually getting this. Because I'm going to go do something I have talked over and over and over again about doing, which is the whole Groundhog Day poll. I'm finally headed to Cody Crafted in Dallas, Texas to install my full Holley fuel injection system on the General. Bernie, applause here. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a long time coming. It's the final piece of the original vision I had when I got the car in the first place. Actually, that fuel injection system was what I wanted to build my future generally around. I saw that thing at SEMA in 2016. I knew I wanted that. I knew exactly where I wanted to put it before I had a General. So this is so cool to me. I get to fuel inject that 383, but in a way that looks period correct. And Cody Young, owner of Cody Crafted, reached out nearly, maybe almost a year ago by this point, about doing it at his shop down there. He lives really close to Bernie, in fact. And here's the reality with life, business, kids, I don't know, political strife. I don't get to do what I want to do when I want to do it all the time. In fact, most of the time I don't. I don't get to do what I want to do. But now it's finally happening. I will be staying with Bernie. Bernie's going to work on the General too. So we're all going to go work for Cody and get this sucker together. I'm so excited. I'm leaving tomorrow, Sunday. I will get back Friday night, hopefully with a running, driving generally again. And in between, I'm going to go to a convention for my other business, which admittedly and realistically is why this all get to happen this next week. So I'm going to do a couple things for you today here. First, I'm going to run an interview from 2018 with Jeff Teal from Holley that talks about the system I'm going to use soup to nuts. This was over on the Muscle Car Place. I know people have actually gone out and bought this exact system or one very close to it and already installed it and really liked it. But if you want to play in the fuel injection space, I thought you could hear from me why I chose what I chose and all the pieces that I'm putting in it. And it's pretty informative. Second, I don't know, it's Groundhog Day. So I'm going to rerun the old episode 58 Kibbe and Finnegan review of Groundhog Day because, I don't know, it seems funny to me. So you have that to look forward to. Patreon supporters, specifically Ernest Franzen and JB Matthews, you have won the Illuma Trailer Swag Bag giveaway. Congrats, fellas. Big day, big day. You're going to get a box in the mail. The swag bag is in it, and inside the swag bag are shirts, ball cap, beer bottle openers, mini screwdrivers, beer can koozies, cool stuff. So thank you to Illuma Trailers for supplying that. Fellas, enjoy your prize. Thanks for supporting us over on Patreon. If you are a listener and you're not yet on Patreon and you too want to be eligible for the prize grab, it's just as easy as giving us money. Well, you also get exclusive access to our extra above and beyond Secret Stash Patreon member only content. Just visit patreon.com/KF show. Seriously, from the heart, we can't thank you all enough for the support there. From our peak membership number, we're down about 50 people. But thanks to your generous support, we're actually still basically at the same financial spot. So we have fewer people supporting, but at a higher level. And that's just freaking awesome. That's humbling. So thank you for that so much. Patreon.com/KF Show is where to go to check that out if you're not yet involved and you'd like to be. Well, let's get to building generals as God intended. Up first again, Jeff Teal from Holley, then on to the movie review with Finnegan. You can set rev limiters in this system. I did talk to Corndog this week. His recommendation for a big block, basically probably stock Chrysler that might be a little weak in the bottom end, is to creep up on it, start about 6,000 RPM, FYI. Okay, here you go. Today, we're speaking to Jeff Teal from Holley Performance Products. Now, we've had people from Holley on in the past, Bill Tishner a billion times, it seems like. It's a name in speed parts that's as old as speed parts, basically. Everybody in the world has had a Holley carburetor at some point. We probably all still do right now, maybe lots of them. But as the saying goes, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Holley makes everything. Yeah, they still make carburetors, but they also make the world's best fuel injections. They make exhaust. They make ignitions. You name it. I'm going to show you that they make most of the brands that you probably have under your hood right now, even if they don't say Holley. And I am putting their Stealth Terminator EFI system on my General Lee. That's right. I'm going fuel injection. It's throttle body fuel injection, but it looks like an old gold Holley carburetor. And there's more coolness in store there for two. Let's dig into all of it. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You bet, man. Well, we've been putting this together for a number of weeks, and I looked in my garage when I got home last week, and I saw you sent me a lot of boxes. So we have a lot to talk about. First thing, though, can you introduce yourself? Maybe give people the 411 on who you are, where you're from, grew up, and got into cars and stuff?
Sure, happy to. As he said, my name is Jeff Teal. I was born and raised in Bowling Green, Kentucky, raised around traditionally Mopar vehicles. So it was only natural to transition into a love of vehicles and working for Holley Performance, being right here in Bowling Green, Kentucky is the hometown. So I am now the events and PR coordinator for Holley Performance and MSD.
Good for you. So Mopars, did you have some Mopars? What did you drive in high school?
Well, actually, my first car was a 1966 Plymouth Sport Fury 3, a car that I still own today.
Really?
She needs a little love, but she is soon to be back on the road. The great thing about working at Holley is, we make so many brands that I'm exposed to pretty much everything I need right through here.
That's for sure. Where are the Mopars, though? I mean, usually it's something you grew up with or something your dad drove or a buddy had. Like, we grew up in a Chevy family, and that's where I got my love of Chevys. I have a General Lee, though, because I love the Dukes of Hazzard. But this is the first Dodge I've ever owned in my whole life. Have you had others? What got you started in Mopar specific?
My father and his best friend were both avid car builders, collectors, more so on my dad's friend's side. He has probably about 23 classic Mopars. Not just Mopars. He does have some other stuff. He's got a Pontiac GTO, but predominantly I grew up seeing things like Furies, Chargers, Challengers. He used to race a Cuda, has a couple satellites. So my dad and myself were usually at his shop pretty much every single day of the week because we were right across the street. And really? It was just kind of a growth from there. Good
for you. When did you get to Holley then?
I've been at Holley now for probably about 3 years.
What did you start doing? I mean, I have so many friends that have worked there or work there now. It's a really neat company. It has survived the ups and downs of the economy over the years. It's in a really strong position now, it seems. But where did you start specific? Was it always in the role you're in, or did you grow into that?
I actually started in tech service. Holley has always been good about keeping with tradition and following up with people who have been part of the company beforehand. So I was lucky enough to have some friends being part of a Bowling Green hometown establishment that had been through Holley and were able to help me kind of get a foot in the door. But I started out in tech service and kind of worked my way up from there. I was there for about 2 years, and this was a very recent transition over to marketing.
Good for you. So you actually know stuff, right? That's what you're saying nicely.
I'll say a little bit.
Okay. Before we get into my system, and you mentioned this a little bit just by saying MSD, that Holley owns a lot of brands, historic brands that people may still be surprised by, like Hooker, Wine, MSD. Can you kind of give the 411 what all do you guys own, and why do you own them all? And why do you still brand them on their own names?
Sure. So shortly after I'd actually started here, so it's been about 2 years now, we went into an acquisition of the MSD family line. So Holley had all of its major family brands since I'd been here, at least. So we had Holley, we had Demon, Pearls, Flowtech, Wyand, Hooker, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually had quite a few of our brands of our own. And then when we acquired MSD, we kind of all went under the same umbrella, and they had the same thing going on their end as well. You know, they were Hayes, QuickTime, Lakewood, Mallory. They had a very extensive listing as well. So we just kind of all married and became one big happy family. The thing about that, the reason that we keep everything under its own name and its own line is because all of these parts are established parts. These are brands that people grew up with. These are names that people know. And that's not something that we want to lose or take away. Each component is something that it's good on its own. You know, Mallory makes great ignition. MSD makes great ignition. Lakewood makes great traction stuff. QuickTime makes great bell housings. So we don't want to pull away from that. We want to keep everything where it belongs and just kind of grow and develop and get better as things go along.
All good answers, and it makes sense, especially when you're talking about stuff that's this old and name recognition. I mean, who hasn't had an MSD ignition box under the hood, right? I mean, it's it's just the reality of things. And I'm not asking questions flippantly, but what about things like what MSD came out with, their atomic EFI fuel injection system? Remember that? And now I assume that's still an offering, but Holley also has throttle body. So you have two brands that sell competing technology. Are they the same thing when all the parts are taken away, or are they truly different?
They are absolutely different. The atomic EFI system is still manufactured by the MSD facility. Holley's fuel injection is, of course, made by us. They are all independent parts. Nothing is specifically interchangeable. They were all developed and based and established under their own fuel injection right. They have their own clientele. They have their own following. You know, some people just love the name MSD. It's what they grew up with. Like you were saying, ignition box under the hood. They want to stick with something that they feel they can trust, that they grew with, and that is the atomic for them. Whereas the people who grew up knowing the Holley name, loving the Holley products, want to come back to us and, you know, being an industry leader of fuel systems for over 100 years, it's only natural that they're going to gravitate towards the Holley system. So we don't want to pull away from one or the other. And yes, the atomic is still available. We want to give people the options that if they want to choose something that's good for them, comfortable for them, reliable, something they know, that they have that availability.
Right. Well, I didn't know what the answer to that was going to be. I'm glad to hear that that's the case, though. You're getting exactly what you think you're getting, regardless of the fact that all of these brands are owned by the same parent company. But here's what I wanted to get to. So maybe 2 years at SEMA, I think it was my last day there too, and I was just walking out. I didn't have any interviews scheduled, but I ran by the Stealth Terminator. Looked like a gold Holley carburetor sitting at the Holley booth, and Blaine was there. I just happened to grab him. I said, "What is this?" And he goes, "Oh, hey, let me show you that." And he looks like Matthew McConaughey, and he had that thick mustache at the time too. So it was a very fun conversation, and it never left my mind. So last Christmas, I bought myself a Dukes of Hazzard General Lee, and we're using it as a promotional car for the Kibbe and Finnegan show. But I want to make a General Lee that has modern drivability, but when you pop the hood, it's got to look like the car did on screen in 1981. And here's what they ran, Jeff.
Naturally.
Yeah, they ran a Wyand aluminum intake, a gold Holley carburetor, some chrome headers, maybe some better plug wires. That's what it looked like under the hood. I want it to perform well, and that's where the Stealth Terminator came in. And can you maybe talk about the system and its capabilities, not just what it looks like, but everything that it's capable of doing, what systems it's capable for, and things like that?
Yeah, happy to. As you stated, the Holley Terminator Stealth looks exactly like one of your traditional XP carburetors, except for its built-in fuel injection. The fuel injection is based off of our Holley, HP, and Dominator ECU systems. So Terminator is a coined phrase for a kit that we pre-built with the throttle body and the injectors housed within it. The capabilities are pretty much limitless. Everything that you could think about doing with an HP system or with the Dominator system, you have the capability of doing with this. And with the part number that you had chose, the 550-445, it's actually a Terminator Stealth that has the ability to do transmission control.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is included that could be done. If you wanted to do a blow-through application, you could change your map sensor, end up doing some boost with it. If you want to do draw-through, you could put a supercharger under it. Just thoughts for later. If you wanted to do...
for thinking.
Overthinking, just a little bit. Nitrous control. The Dominators aren't necessarily And the HPs as well aren't necessarily limited. There are so many functions that you can do with the multiple inputs and outputs that if you can dream it up, you can build the ladder logic within the system to be able to do what you need to do, as well as getting all your fuel and timing control with it. You can do drive shaft speed sensors. You can do wheel speed sensors. I've actually had people go so far as to do infrared temp sensors for tires.
Really?
So the limit really kind of just goes into what you have imagination-wise.
How old is this system then? There's too much capability in there to just be a newly developed product line. So this is all based off of Dominator architecture then?
It is. And, you know, Holley has been in fuel injection since the late 80s. To really think about that, it's just not something that most people would think about that early in the timeline as being established. But the Dominator system has been, say, about 8-9 years, probably somewhere right in there that we've been working. So it's had iterations from all the way from version 1, version 2 being the first actually released to public, up to right now we are on our 4th version. The ECU has changed a little bit over the years as well, and it's just gotten more sophisticated as time has come.
Well, something you mentioned there is, I did want transmission control, so I have put in the car already, and it's from Silver Sport Transmissions, but it's bolt-in GM 4L60E that fits in the hole for a Mopar. It's a really well-designed kit. When I was going about getting the kit from them, I said, I'm looking at the Holley system, but I'd really like the Holley system to be the brains of it, because I'm kind of looking for OEM fit and finish here. I want to make 2 systems go in the same car, hook up all the wires, and I just want it to work. And their response was, there's no reason that's not going to be just fine. So I even asked them before I asked you about it, if that's going to be a good idea. So you must have had lots of customers requesting transmission control. When did that come into play? Because until I started looking, man, I didn't even know you had that.
Our systems have always been kind of on the forefront of advancement, and one of the markets that we knew that we were planning on going into pretty heavy with all the other components we make for that market was an LS swap market. So going into an LS, it was only natural that we cover everything, you know, not just your T56, but we want to give people the ability to run automatic transmissions, do transmission control with those. So, you know, why not start to work that into the system as well? That way we can grow with transmission types. And we have over the years. It was originally just the 4L60. We now do 65, 70, 75, 4L80, and we've actually started to adapt into some Ford transmissions with the 4R70W. It was always a thought that why would we create limitations for something that could potentially be a complete system control for people who want to be able to go through the process and tune and make that control and marry the car the way they feel that their shift point should be and their car should run.
That's what I'm so excited about here, because I'm not going to be, hooking up brackets to a carburetor to get a throttle position sensor reading. I mean, it's just right. Computer. It will just know where everything is. Now, will I need any speed sensor stuff? I still have a speedo cable hooked up on the side of the transmission. That's what I'm planning to use. What all do I have to have information-wise for the computer to be able to hook this up? So if somebody bought the same kit I got, they just want to throw it on a car that's already got a carburetor on it, whether they got an electronic transmission or not, what all are they going to have to do to make it work?
So assuming that they didn't have an electronically controlled transmission, if they wanted to do speed, they would basically just hook up, say, a collar to the drive shaft, and they could marry it that way. Or we've actually went so far with advancements that we now have the touch screen, like the 553-106 and 109 touch screens that allow you to hook up a GPS module. We also make standalone GPS analog style speed gauges. So if you don't necessarily have a speed sensor accessibility to your transmission to hook one up, there you go, you're covered. But in your case, it's as simple as a plug and play. We made a transmission harness that connects right in, runs to 4L60, 80, 75, all those numbers that GM makes. And it hooks right up. Once it does, it's already set up for a variable speed sensor within the Dominator. You basically just tell it that you're doing transmission control, which is a simple selection. When you choose your setup for your engine configuration, you select that you want to do transmission control, select what transmission it is, and there you are. Just set how you want to shift.
So I'm just going to tell it, even though I don't have a speed sensor hooked up anywhere, what I want it to do from there. Is that right?
In your case, being a little bit different, we can get you a GPS module, or we can do a collar, or whatever you need. Anything that can sense revolutions or that we know the pulse is on, we could set it for the proper pulse and revolution and speed and do the calculations inside of the software, and it'll automatically convert for you.
And this all has to do with how the transmission shifts and when and why. That's why you need to know speed, right?
It does. Basically, you need to know how fast revolutions are going, and then you need to know line pressures and set it up for whatever. You can set it up for RPM base, you can set it up for variable speed base, you can set it up. So again, it goes back to kind of imagination is the limit.
Right. I'm just getting myself up to speed on all these new things that hook up, like line pressure was something you mentioned there. Well, you can control shift points. You can have it's like an app on your iPhone. You can simply dial it up and say, you know what? I think I just want to shift harder, and I'm going to go into performance mode right now with the same transmission hooked up to the same computer. You're just changing configurations there. So these are things that I'm looking forward to getting into as I start to install this system. But from just a pure nuts and bolts perspective, is there a horsepower limit? So if somebody wants to put a throttle body on some engine that they've got now, what is the flange that they got to have on there to accept it? And then how much horsepower can it make?
Any of the current Terminator systems that we produce, and we also produce a Sniper and a bigger flange, but any of the current Terminator systems we produce are traditional 4150 style flanges. If you have a quadrijet, that's fine. You can do an adapter plate. Any of it will bolt right on and take place just like you would if you were changing from a quadrijet style plate over to a 4150/60 carburetor. The limitations are basically just your injectors. I mean, at a certain point, that is an air valve. I think it's about a 950 CFM air valve. So whenever you get to that point, if you're not pushing more air through via some sort of blow through, that will be a physical limitation. But the injectors in it are 480 pound per hour injectors. So you're good up to realistically about 650 horsepower as it sits. We also make an upgrade kit for those guys who do want to put a little more through it and change the map sensor. The upgrade kit is 205 pound per hour injectors. So we're talking some buku horsepower numbers, probably around 1,100, 1,200 horsepower.
Buku, is that the same as a crap ton?
That would be the same as a crap ton. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you guys were pretty nice to me because, I mean, I was even sending you pictures from like old popular hot rodding, a picture, images of the General with the hood open in black and white, and then you entertained me, and I know that, so thank you. You still have the wind intake they used back in the day, so I just ordered one. It's a dual plane intake, and I realize that there are some better options out there now, but I'm trying to be correct to the TV series. We're going to throw some hooker headers on there. We're going to try them. Because I have this different transmission in there, I will lovingly put the headers into place, and if the transmission I selected didn't cause any problems, we can go ahead and run them. The headers are beautiful. Like, truly beautiful. I had two questions, though, because you sent me a fuel tank, which is a Holley fuel tank with fuel pump in it, and you sent me a dual sync distributor and also an MSD ignition box. Tell me about the dual sync distributor. What makes it dual sync? What is dual syncing? So
the distributor actually has two Hall effect sensors inside of the distributor. Basically, it's going to give you your crank signal as, it would, and then it's also going to give you your cam signal. The dual sync was basically made for people who are wanting to do sequential injection. It's not necessarily helpful in a throttle body application, but it is one of the easiest, crispest, clearest ways in order for you to get your crank signal directly back to one of our ECUs. Mm-hmm. And we've tested them, we've ran them together, we know they work well together. So let's say, for instance, that at some point you decide that you want to use a little more fuel, do a little more power, maybe sneak some fuel injectors as opposed to doing a throttle body injected system. Mm-hmm. The dual sync would give you the ability to individually control your injector per runner. So not only do you have your timing control, so you can control timing per cylinder, you can now control fuel per cylinder as well. Basically, it's just best performance, best timing that you can get out of a fuel-injected system. Okay, so now I've gone all this route here. Is there some way I could do individual injectors per cylinder on this car at some point? Yeah. The Dominator ECU and the HP ECU, they can be in part of the same systems that we've already produced. It's the same fuel injection we would do if we were doing a multi-port system. So if you wanted to continue to use that Terminator because it looks cool and port your manifold for injectors or get a different manifold that suits injector bungs, run some fuel rails, run some line through it, and you can do sequentially controlled fuel injection.
Well, that's next year's project, isn't it? That does sound pretty cool. It's neat to know how configurable it is. And I realize that throttle body is a very good compromise. And I think it's going to work remarkably well. I know what you're saying here, and I get it. Tell me about the tank. So you sent me a fuel tank and a fuel pump in the tank.
So we sent you a Sniper EFI tank. We make a bunch of different tanks for a bunch of different solutions. All of those are configured currently with a 550 horsepower limit, and it's just the fuel. It's a 255 liter per hour fuel pump. We plan on having some bigger modules inside of those for some guys who want to go bigger performance, probably around a 450 pump. But we wanted to make fueling from tail end to the engine. We wanted to give guys a complete solution. So the fuel tank is basically a fuel pump inside of the tank that gives you the ability to get to fuel injected pressure, because carburetor guys, 6.5, 7 PSI, you've got to have a little more when you're doing fuel injectors. So these are basically going to put you right to about 60 PSI, and you're going to have a regulator in line built into your fuel system. So basically it's going to be party return. The tanks are set up so they can have feed and return both, and it is just one more piece of component to give you an all-around fueling solution.
Do you make tanks for pretty much every muscle car out there, would you say?
We do. We have a very extensive line, and it is always growing. Predominantly classic American muscle, the big three, that is where we're starting. And we've actually considered venturing into some other avenues, but that's for a later date.
Well, I'll leave it there. Don't worry. If you don't want to buy a tank and you just need a pump, can you do that?
Absolutely.
Yep,
you can do pretty much anything that's going to support the fuel pressure that you need. The throttle body that you have is 43.5 PSI on those injectors. Anything that is over, of course, you can always regulate down. But if you wanted to do an inline, if you wanted to do a universal retrofit module, we make those. So you can take the tank that you have, drop it in, and still get the same kind of fueling solution.
Awesome. Okay, tell me about the ignition box then. What makes this MSD box specific to EFI, or is it? And since you're a Mopar guy, I really need some education here. So I still have a points distributor with a ballast resistor in here. I don't even know what that stuff does, Jeff. I don't know why there's a ballast resistor in there. I've grown up on GMs. What all is going to be removed from the loop here?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, most people, a ballast resistor is a little bit of black magic. But so the 6 EFI box that we got to you, it is designed for aftermarket fuel injection, which is probably the easy way to say that.
Okay.
Us having multiple different lines, multiple different fuel injections, we didn't want to make any limitations for ourselves, as well as anybody who wanted the added benefit of going to fuel injection with a system that may not be from the family line. The 6 EFI box was designed with a bunch of different RPM connection capability. So, of course, in fuel injection, you have to have an RPM pulse, so whatever fuel injection you're using knows what the engine's running at.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, the reason that we wanted to make sure to get you a captive ignition box with the setup that you're doing is because with the systems having time and control capability, we had to have something that is capable of sparking a coil. The ECU itself doesn't quite have enough energy to be able to spark a coil as it sits. So that is kind of your generator, so to speak.
Okay. Timing control is going to be so beneficial, and that's one more thing that adds so much drivability to this particular system. And compared to what this system is capable of doing, I'm not even scratching the surface. I'm trying to make an old car run like a new car, but still be an old car. And it's still an old 383. I'm not even going to open the 383 up. I don't want to. So with all of this in there, will I have a ballast resistor in the system anymore, or will that now be eliminated?
There won't necessarily be a need for it. So your ballast resistor was basically made to keep your coil sort of in line, make sure you're not frying anything, make sure that you're at a proper power level, so to speak. This is pretty much an elimination thereof. You just need something to be able to spark the coil. This will have basically a proper trigger to be able to spark that coil. Oh,
and that was the last thing you sent me. Again, it was a nice little entertainment of me patting me on the head, but you sent me a chrome coil, because that's what the Duke boys used. So, I believe it's an Excel coil. That should work real well. It's going to look the part, and it's going to run like a Swiss watch. And I'll be able to do some tuning here and there. But what I'm really looking for is a car that when you get in, cold or hot, you crack the starter, and it's going to run and run well, pretty much all day long. And I know that, modern stuff is so much better, but old stuff is so much fun. So I'm excited to get this all together and make it work and show it to you. I'd love your Mopar opinion of it once you got it out to play with it. Have you done anything to your car, fuel injection wise?
Not yet. The plan is there. My car needs quite a few more odds and ends with suspension before I kind of get to that point, a little bit of body work. But the fuel injection is definitely down the line for me as well.
Cool. All right. Do you have any other Mopar advice for me? So I put a normal 8 3/4 rear end in the car. It's got a 489 case. I got a True Track and 323 gears. I'm going to put factory disc brakes on the front of it. Is there anything I should know? Do I need a mini starter? Is there any electronic stuff? Do I need a different charging system? What Mopar advice can you give me here? This has nothing to do with Holley. This is you telling me what to do so that I don't explode the car. Oh, and I guess one Holley specific question would be, if there are power requirements that this entire system now generates that my alternator is not capable of, I guess that's something I need to know. What type of power consumption are we looking at here?
So the system is designed for a 12-volt system, but anything between 12 and 16 volts is fine. As far as what you need for power consumption, you're not looking at any more than you would be if you had a radio running. So if you got anywhere from 130 to 150 amp alternator, you're completely fine.
Okay. I don't even know what's in the car. I'm going to check. What were factory ones? Original Mopar stuff was probably more in the 2 digits, like 90 amps, 80 amps, something like that, I'm assuming.
Probably around 80 amps.
Well, I guess we'll figure that one out when we get there.
That'll be specific to what other electronic components you'd be running inside the vehicle. Are you running a radio? Did you add anything else? What other electronic components are you running?
It doesn't have air. At the moment, it has a CB in it. It doesn't even have a radio at the moment. I might put a radio in, but it'll be like a factory kind of real small requirement radio. The most electronic load that I'm putting on here is all the stuff that you sent me. So it'll be the ignition system, the fuel injection system. Those are the things that'll be chewing up power.
Honestly, you're probably going to be fine, but the good thing about Holley, if you do need an alternator, just give me a call back and we can probably help you out.
You have alternators too?
We do. Both in the Holley line and, of course, the tried and true Mr. Gasket.
Okay. Well, you learn more every day, right? Okay. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it. Looking forward to share this with people, and I'm really looking forward to putting all this stuff on. All right?
Sounds good.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Yo, okay, that was Jeff Teal you would have just heard from now. As I recall, there were a few things in that interview that we didn't talk about that you will also need if you wanted the exact same method I'm doing. If you get the kit that has transmission control, you will also need to get yourself some fuel line, your regulator. There's a pressure transducer. That's kind of optional if you want to do that. If you buy the Holley Master kit, though, it comes with everything you really need. I don't think that one has trans control in it, though. But if you buy the Master kit, which is almost the exact same price as the one with trans control, it literally comes with everything you need. But if you're getting trans control, here's the extra stuff you're going to want to get. Jeff Teal actually just shipped this out to Cody today direct. So here's the first thing you want. Part number 526-2, that's the EFI fuel system kit. That's everything to get from the tank up to the throttle body. It also includes a pump, and I won't need that pump. And I also won't need the pre-filter because my fuel tank has both of those in it. So I'll actually return those to them. But it has everything else. It's a nice black braided hose, all the AN fittings, bends, corners, a fuel pump block-off plate, the post filter, got that. I also got 526-9, which is the return kit. And I'm going with like the Vapor Guard, like a good old-fashioned rubber fuel hose. And that's the return back from the regulator to the tank. Because fuel injection, you got a return on there. I got some brackets to mount the post-fuel filter. I went with 162-573 just because they're very affordable, super cheap. They look nice, and they fit the filter that comes in the master kit. And then this is the optional thing. You don't have to do this, but I wanted to. So what you're going to do is you're going to run from the tank, out of the tank, up to a regulator. And that regulator, one side of the regulator goes up to the throttle body to feed that, and the other side of the regulator goes back to the tank. Well, also on that regulator is a provision to put in a pressure sensor, a transducer, so you can monitor on your Dominator ECU in the car your fuel pressure, which is smart. Do that. I've put other systems on before. It's always a hassle when you're trying to chase this stuff down. And if you can monitor on the computer, you may as well. And that is part number 554-102. It's a little extra insurance. It's worth the money. It's $134. Totally worth it. Totally worth it to get that. So just want to make sure that I threw that in there in case you want to duplicate this system for yourself. And with that, let's duplicate something else. A repeat. A Groundhog Day experience. Here is Groundhog Day review with Mike Finnegan. And I'm going to close out with this unless Bernie sticks something on. So thank you all. We'll catch you later. And now, Mike, we are ready to review the movie that is the theme of your life, Groundhog Day. Release date in the theaters, oddly enough, not on Groundhog's Day. It was released February 12th, 1993, starring Bill Murray, Andy McDowell, Chris Elliott, directed by the great Harold Ramis. Mike, do you have a summary review of this wonderful piece of Americana?
Oh, you know I do. And here it is. The universe is a tricky son of a bitch, and you are not going to cheat it out of a good time. And in the case of the Harold Ramis and Bill Murray flick Groundhog Day, the good time comes in the form of tormenting Murray's character, Phil Schuler, who is a self-absorbed, narcissistic Pennsylvania television weatherman. Schuler is angling for a network television gig, a reprieve from the lame local weather reports he's grown accustomed to performing at WPBH. He just needs to handle one last assignment, covering the annual February 2nd sighting of Punxsutawney Phil, a nearby furry sage whom the nation looks to make the call whether winter will continue for another 6 weeks after Groundhog Day. Now, Schuler has spent the last 3 Groundhog Days in the tiny town of Punxsutawney, and he loathes the lack of square footage as much as he does the seemingly simple-minded inhabitants.
Did you write this?
Yes. He's pretty much mailing in his weather report this time around while treating those around him like dirt when the universe sends him a cold front right up his shorts. For what seems like an eternity.
Are you sure you read? It's like Wikipedia.
For what seems like an eternity, Phil is trapped in Punxsutawney on Groundhog Day, and he's the only human aware of his predicament. Once the realization that he's repeating the same day over and over and over again, no matter what he does for 24 hours, sets in, and the rest of the world is oblivious to his plight, he runs the gamut of emotions. He's distraught while attempting to convince his producer, Rita, played by Andy McDowell, of his predicament. He revolts by driving drunk and robbing a bank truck while attempting to change something, anything about his day that might bring about a new one. Later, he's suicidal as he takes Punxsutawney Phil for a ride off a cliff in an old Chevy C20 pickup. But ultimately, Phil learns to become a better version of himself. He doesn't change, he's still sarcastic, but he does learn to love Rita and the townsfolk while working to deserve the love of both. He saves a kid from a falling tree. He feeds the homeless. He helps a quivering couple to the altar. He even performs the Heimlich maneuver on the mayor of the town. And in the end, Phil becomes a better man, and the universe finally lets the calendar lumber forward to February 3rd. Once he realizes he's free, Phil decides to stay in Punxsutawney with Rita, and they all live happily ever after.
I am so impressed.
I'm not done.
Oh, sorry.
All right, so my favorite scene in the entire movie is when the dickhead version of Phil is desperate to escape town, right? And he's on a payphone. He's bitching at the operator about the long-distance lines being down. And remember, this is 1993, so not everybody had a cell phone, even Phil. Yeah. And he barks, "Don't you have some sort of line for celebrities or emergencies? I'm both. A celebrity in an emergency." And 2 seconds later, while standing at the payphone, a guy walks by with a snow shovel and hits him in the head. See, universe. And then I really loved the montage of Phil getting slapped by Rita over and over again as he tries to woo her.
Every day. It's a different day every slap.
Oh, God, it was awesome. Watching Bill Murray get slapped is awesome. His face is just fantastic. And so here's some notes, right? The lady who runs the bed and breakfast, Miss Lancaster, is played by Angela Patton. All right. Now, this is the same lady who sits next to Holly Hunter in the movie Home for the Holidays. Mm-hmm. They're on the airplane, and she's disgustingly eating hard-boiled eggs and salting fried chicken and eating them next to her on the plane while talking incessantly.
Yeah.
I noticed her
soft spot in your heart.
Oh, my wife loves the movie Home for the Holidays, so I've seen it a bunch, and I recognized her immediately. The groundhog's name was Scooter, all right?
His real name?
You already told us. Yeah, that's his real name. They name groundhogs. They do. You already told us this movie was directed by Harold Ramis. He also co-wrote the script, right? But this is the movie that destroyed his relationship with Bill Murray in real life.
It is.
They stopped talking for 21 years and didn't reconnect until Ramis was ready to pass away, which sucks. I looked. Murray's never really addressed the issue. There's been a whole bunch of news reports and interviews by other people, but he's never really said what happened and why he refused to speak or work with Ramis again after that. More notes. The mayor is played by Murray's brother, Brian Doyle Murray, and who coincidentally also played Mr.
They're
Shirley.
Brothers?
Yeah, they're brothers. Murray's got brothers.
I had no idea.
Yeah, they play golf together. He's got another brother. His other brother, and I forget his name, was John Cusack's best friend in One Crazy Summer. That's his other brother, who also played his brother. His brother played his brother in Scrooged. It was the one that kept inviting him over for board games on Christmas Eve.
You're kidding me.
That's his other brother. Yeah.
I didn't know any of that.
Yeah, you said comedian Chris Hellett played his camera operator, Larry. And so, anyway, this movie's rad. It's grown on me. I did not really like it the first time I saw it because there's a whole lot of depressing moments in it. And his character is just, it's hard to love him. But Bill Murray's effortless way that he does comedy is the polar opposite of somebody like Jim Carrey, who's, all face and gyration and, just over the top. And Murray is just this sarcastic douchebag. You notice he never really yells. It's just the faces he makes and his sarcasm that really just makes him hilarious.
He can say the same words with two lilts in his voice, and one of them's really funny, and one of them's like serious.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I wonder what he's like in real life, because a lot of comedians are just dark individuals in real life. They're just not happy people, and so you kind of see a tinge of that in Murray in some of these roles. Like when he played Scrooged, when he was in that role, it was very kind of similar to this one. And so who knows what he's like in real life? I don't know, but I sure as hell love watching him on the big screen. So I give this movie 9 corn dogs.
9 full corn dogs. 9 Punxsutawney corn dogs?
Footlongs.
Prepared Mike is a amazing thing. We should record early in the morning all the time. You're hitting single after single after single.
Just a good old boy, never meaning no harm.
Yeah, fun times with Finnegan. Actually, that's back when the show was called the Kibbe and Finnegan Show instead of by its current name, the Kibbe and Friends Show. Hi, it's Bernie, and with an invitation like Rob gave me, remember, he said this.
And I'm going to close out with this unless Bernie sticks something on, so thank you all.
So to me, that's license really to do anything I want to do. But I won't. I'll be good. Getting ready for Rob's arrival, we're going to go over to Cody Crafted, and we're going to work on the Kibbe Lee. Man, I can't wait. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to get our hands dirty, and we're going to have an awesome General Lee when we're done. It's going to be a cool car, and Rob's going to tell you all about it, I'm sure. I think we're going to shoot some video of it. That is contingent on me finding my video camera and the battery charger. If that happens, we will shoot some video. Meantime, thanks for listening. Find us on Patreon if you haven't already. A lot of cool material over there, a lot of extra material. But if not, lots of cool stuff right here as well. Hey guys, we appreciate you, guys and girls, kids alike. Thanks for being a part of the show. We can't do it without you. Don't even want to. See ya.